So 3 years ago, my son had a ruptured brain aneurysm, which also led to a stroke. It's very rare. It's rare in adults, and it's exceptionally rare in kids. We took him to our in-network emergency room, where they informed me they would not be able to save his life. They called the other hospital that is in St. Louis, Missouri, that had experience with pediatric neurosurgery, and they sent him to the other hospital, where they promptly saved his life. That wasn't a choice that we made. That was the hospital saying, we can't save him, and we will need to send him to another hospital that can. So we started off at an in-network hospital. When they got to the second hospital, we didn't know if my son would live. It was touch and go for a very long time. He had 2 surgeries, and he was in ICU for almost 4 weeks. At the first surgery, we're hoping that he's going to make it. Insurance called me and informed me that I wasn't in an in-network hospital and that I was going to be responsible for the bills, even though it was an emergency. I said whatever I needed to do. My son's life was worth untold amount to me, and honestly, he was in the middle of surgery when they called to tell me this. As the weeks went on, and they would let me know that we were in an out-of-network hospital, and that we needed to move him. The doctors refused to move him because he was in critical care in ICU, and he physically could not be moved without dying. He had just had a stroke. So it was kind of crazy to me that insurance was calling and having these discussions with me. And I had top of the level insurance during all of this time. My son is now okay. He was perfectly healthy at the time. This is something that's so rare that we are in several research studies to help them figure out the meaning of aneurysms that happen in adults. Because of this aneurysm that he had, he's now listed as having a pre-existing condition. For me, that's the scariest thing that could happen, because even though the chances of him having another aneurysm are lower than most people in the general public, because he's had one and we monitor it, he won't be able to have insurance if there's pre-existing conditions, or if he wasn't allowed to be on my health care plan. There wouldn't be a choice. You can't be 22 and have a pre-existing condition and afford to pay what the premiums would be. And he actually is super healthy. He is a runner. He was a runner at the time. We have no history in our family of this illness. That's the other reason it was so rare. One of the things that happened that disturbed me the most is this is such a rare thing to happen that I didn't understand how insurance could be arguing with my doctors about what was needed or not needed. There was no protocol there for who was needed. Because this happens to adults, they used both an adult neurosurgeon and a pediatric neurosurgeon to work together on his case, because this was unprecedented in this area and actually in the United States. So as this time was going on, my son had a hole in his head from the surgery, and we had to reinstall his skull piece into his head. So he wasn't allowed, when he got out of the hospital, to do a lot of things. He had to be at home, and he had to be monitored pretty steadily. He couldn't be alone. So that meant that I had to spend all of my time and energy focused on taking care of him, like any mom would want to do. The thing that caused me great anguish is I also had to spend about 3 hours a week, every week, for 18 months on the phone with the insurance company in the hospital, trying to work out the payments and the bill. So the insurance would send me checks for $8,000, but they wouldn't say what the checks were for. They would have invoice numbers that wouldn't match up with the same invoice numbers that the hospital would. The hospital would reapply for different things from the insurance company because the insurance company wouldn't pay for procedure A, so the hospital would reapply and proceed to pay for procedure B. And so in the meantime, they're sending me checks and I didn't know if I'm supposed to cash them. I'm having the hospital telling me I owe them money. We went through an appeals process. What I found out during this time is about balanced billing, surprise bills. So even though we had top of the level insurance and it says you can only be charged so much, if you're out of network, they can charge you as much as they want to. There's no choice. You have no say in it. And for me, this was an emergency. So I really felt like I had no say. The total bill ended up being over $500,000. And of that, insurance paid only about $120,000. That's what they thought that they should pay. It was up to me to negotiate with the hospital what I could pay out of that. For most families, this would cause medical bankruptcy. And that's not okay. And this could happen to anybody. My son was healthy. I am educated. We spent 3 hours a week talking to different insurance agents, having to relive and tell my story over and over and over again, and talk about the surgeries that saved my son's life. As my son is in the other room, relearning how to walk and relearning how to read, I'm spending my time dealing with the insurance companies.